Welcome to the Enterprise Thought Leadership Podcast, where we explore the latest in enterprise trends, tech, and strategy with the top leaders shaping the future.
Hi, welcome to our podcast, On Stage with Enterprise Thought Leaders. My name is Apurva and I'm the Associate Editor of IT Security Wire, an enterprise security publication. We have engaging conversations with global thought leaders and industry experts, reaching over 1.3 million business leaders worldwide. Today, we are talking about something that's affecting just about every IT team and business out there, and that's the end of life for Windows 10. To help us sense it all, we have Edgar Zacharjev, General Manager of RMM at Kaseya, overseeing the company's global remote monitoring and management portfolio. A veteran product and strategy leader, Edgar previously served as SVP and General Manager at Pulseway, where he guided growth and modernized product offerings to meet the evolving needs of IT professionals. Earlier, he had leadership roles at Goliath Technologies and Lakeside Software. Known for anticipating industry shifts and translating them into pragmatic solutions for MSPs and IT teams, Edgar focuses on faster resolution times, safer endpoints, and automation at scale. Edgar, welcome to the podcast. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And thank you for the warm introduction.
You're welcome. Great. So let's jump right in. As we all know, Windows 10 has officially reached its end of life on October 14 this year. That means no more updates or security patches for Windows 10. No doubt this is going to leave millions of systems potentially vulnerable to new and emerging threats. Now, Edgar, given this shift, what steps should enterprises take to stay secure and protect their systems? What do
Yeah,
you
and
think?
obviously this has been coming for quite some time, a couple of years. So businesses had time to prepare, but often cases other things come in the way. And hardware requirements also require certain upgrades of systems as well in the meantime. So it's never as straightforward as total migrations at the same time. But there's obviously with the end of life, security issues come into play. There's no more updates, security updates, and everything else associated. So companies have to be aware of that and continue to maintain those systems while they do the projects. There's still a lot of good ways to be able to maintain those systems, even though it's end of life. There are products that have been end of life, but still can be supported. Whether you're specifically updating certain applications on those machines as well, you're whitelisting, blacklisting applications as well to ensure that you maintain stability in those machines. A lot of software still supports being installed on Windows 10. So either you're managing through the RMM, patching the applications through the RMM specifically. You have AV, EDR backup installed to do backup full and disaster recovery on those machines. You can still scan for specific vulnerabilities that are still not patched that could have been to the latest version. So there is still a latest version of Windows 10 that can be put together while you define that plan. But I obviously would suggest start having that sort of plan, that at least start transitioning or analyzing how much of your environment is on Windows 10. And typically you can do an assets listing. You can see how many devices are still on Windows 10. We're typically seeing 20 to 30% are still on Windows 10, especially with larger organization where it's taken a little bit longer. So identifying those, matching what the specs of the hardware for those devices are, because some of those will have to be replaced because they won't run Windows 11. Having a plan to upgrade those systems, buy new hardware that can go to Windows 11, and that might be a fresh start. And then slowly rolling out a plan. Whether you're doing it by department or you're doing it by location, etc., or type of device, and then slowly transition that as soon as possible.
Yeah, great points, Edgar. And as you said, that many organizations can blacklist and whitelist applications or patch the applications.
Mm-hmm.
So while there are many IT teams started identifying vulnerable systems or endpoints that pose a risk, do you think there is any way enterprises can get better visibility into such risks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can still, like I mentioned, there's a lot of software that can support those vulnerability scanning. Majority of software still supports being on Windows 10, including our own solutions that our clients use to to scan for vulnerabilities, like for example, vulnerability scanner or penetration testing. You could do application control through an RMM endpoint management solution to understand what applications, make sure those applications are up to date, or at least start by running reports to understand, what third-party software we also got on these solutions, and are those up to date specifically, because we can keep those up to date, and they're supported. Understand any existing updates to Windows 10 that you haven't still installed to get it to the latest version. You can do hardening policies for firewalls, BitLocker, RDP lockdown, and predominantly also keep the other areas of your business secure, because penetrating an operating system is still a difficult task. Majority of attacks still happen through email phishing attacks, because most ransom organizations still go for the easier option. So ensuring you still have protection on your Microsoft 365 if you're using that, your email security. You do dark web monitoring for credentials being stolen, so that those are updated, have secure 2FA, making sure AV EDR is installed. A laundry list of items that can be still done to keep your environment secure. So it's not total panic mode. It's nothing new that people haven't seen yet. In fact, I have talked to some people that still have Windows XP installed, and that's long gone past any sort of support. So there's no time to panic just yet, but I would suggest obviously having a concrete plan. Number one, from securing that environment, what I mentioned with a list of items, but also start ensuring that you do those assessments to begin with, but are they using an endpoint solution or asset management solution to track those devices, to understand how many of those devices, what's on that device, what's the hardware on that device, and at least start making a plan to making sure it's secure now, and then also a plan to transition that to Windows 11.
There's one more point I would like to address, that is time management at this phase. So, time becomes a very big challenge for some companies because they just cannot update their systems overnight. So, are there any steps you suggest that teams must take to minimize their exposure to new vulnerabilities as they prepare to fully migrate to Windows 11? What do you think, Edgar?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, time management, I mean, this has been coming for 4 or 5 years. So time management's been quite some time, but we often leave these things, or it's hard to upgrade these items, right? So, because I understand some enterprises, they still have specific software that can only run on Windows 10. Potentially some banking organizations, etc. So, but there's a lot of things you could do in terms of starting your plan now. Number one, to begin with, inventorying all your Windows 10 devices, understanding the hardware that's on it, the software that's on it, making sure that you have AV, EDR, SOC, all the core fundamentals, protecting those machines. You're doing regular scanning on those machines for security vulnerabilities, that the Windows 10 is still up to date, or the latest version at least. The applications that are other than Windows on the software are still up to date. And you're keeping that secure. And you still have the other protocols for your business around your email security. You install some regulations and rules for your firewalls, whether proxies, application whitelisting, to make sure nothing new is getting installed on those operating systems. And you can do it quite easily by having a whitelisted application list for your Windows 10 devices, which will keep you protected from outside software that shouldn't be on that. But as that's happening with the initial checklist, is start seeing, setting a date to when you can get to Windows 11. Realistically, and that's going to be the main way for you to be secure, is having an updated operating system. So understanding, and the core criteria to that is understanding, is there specific software that limits you from moving to? So if you're using internal CRM that only runs on Windows 10, or EHR platforms that specifically only run on Windows 10, is thinking what software you can upgrade to that can run on Windows 11. And if you don't have that blocker, understand, is there hardware limitations on your machines? Because not all machines will be able to run Windows 11, and that was a blocker as well. And having a plan to upgrade some of those, at least on a portion of your environments over the next year or 2 or 3. You'll be able to finish the project and still be secure. So I wouldn't panic completely, like this is the end of the world, but at least have a solid plan to what they can have in place right now and how they can get to the Windows 11 stage.
What you said is some of your friends who are still using XP, or they may have been using legacy systems which cannot take Windows 11
Yeah,
installed, or they cannot install Windows 11. So, don't you think hackers must be seeing this as an opportunity to
well,
hack the
absolutely.
system?
Absolutely. Everything is an opportunity. There's a ransomware attack every 4 seconds. So opportunities are endless. I think especially with the way how easy it is to access ransomware software and for organizations to become the bad threats, there's more and more of those popping up and the attacks are quite frequent. So any updated operating system is a big opportunity. The way I see it is some of the people I've worked with before that still have XP environments, etc. Have maybe an air-gapped environment at least, so it's not publicly connected to the internet. So they can close it off on premise, keep that secure, because the struggles there is that they have millions and millions of dollars of software they have that they have to use that is not supported by. So it's not only upgrading to Windows 11 for them; it's finding budget to upgrade their main driving software on those machines, purchasing new software that can be supported on Windows 11, purchasing hardware. So it's quite an expensive migration, or it can be, right? You're buying hardware, you're buying new software, and it can cost millions and millions of dollars, right? So it's often cases organizations will take a backseat and maybe just air gap it and take some internal solutions to be able to maintain what they have. But you still have to plan, and the longer time goes on, the more expensive it will become, and the more dangerous it will become. But absolutely, it's an exposure. We saw this, in healthcare before, where there was an increase in RAM. It was outdated operating systems, non-maintained, non-patched systems, which was quite an easy entry for hackers. And those had to be connected to the internet as well because they were running EHR health based applications for patient management, so they had to be connected. So it became a sprawling ground. So you have to consider all those items. If you're going to maintain Windows 10, you have to make sure that you have those security protocols in place. If you can't migrate to Windows 11 yet because of budget restrictions or resource restrictions, there's things you can do still to making sure those up to date.
So as you said, Edgar, it's always been an opportunity for the hackers to hack any vulnerable system. So Edgar, help us understand how is Kaseya helping IT teams handle such situations?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it begins from securing your Windows 10 environment and also helping our clients migrate. So there's two ways. So initially we still maintain the same protocols that you can right now with advanced endpoint security with our Data EDR AV solution, a Rocket Cyber for SOC, managed SOC detection, our patching software through the RMM, so making sure that Windows 10 is up to the latest date and third-party applications are up to date, drivers are up to date, and other things are up to date on that. So you limit the scope of things that are not up to date. Whitelisting, blacklisting applications through our remote monitoring and management as well, making sure that you maintain the policies in that. Hardening the policies through the monitoring management for firewalls, RDP lockdowns, email security, so backup disaster recovery, and testing with our Datto BCDR solution. So we still have a full NIST framework of solutions you can maintain and do your best at ensuring that those environments are secure. And then secondly, with the migration projects, how we typically work with our clients or how they use our software, they'll do a full assessment with the RMM. They'll pull a list, how many Windows 10 devices they still have. And typically across our base, there's probably maybe 20 to 30% still remaining for reasons I've described below. But you'll have an organizational chart. Here's the departments still. Here's the devices still on Windows 10, locations they're at. And then you can run a hardware asset repository to understand can the system even be migrated? So you understand, if you're planning this, you do have to replace the actual device because it cannot support Windows 11. So being able to assess that as you're planning things out, creating dashboards, assigning roles to your teams. So slowly you set a goal for yourself and next steps, and all that's managed through the Kaseya platforms and solutions as you continuously go. Ensuring those protocols are in place for security and seeing if it's out of compliance. So you get notified if there's issues, security concerns, so you can resolve those as you're doing the full migration. So absolutely, we still have a full stack that ensures a lot of our clients are still extremely secure on Windows 10. But on top of that, they have a full project management view across, like I mentioned, remote monitoring or management, or our professional service automation platforms to ensure those projects are progressing accordingly. And if anything goes out of compliance, you can address it, get a ticket, resolve the issue, and stay secure and progress your project.
Thank you so much. That's really insightful, Edgar. It really helps put us things into perspective for a lot of teams managing this change. One last question, Edgar. As we look ahead, what does the next phase of this transition actually look like? How can companies best prepare to stay secure and compliant post Windows 10?
It's going to be hard to stay compliant for a lot of compliance regulations if you're still in Windows 10. The best you could do is keep it as secure as I mentioned, but the best strategy you can have is migrate to Windows 11. It's always the best strategy. You know, even though I understand some companies and it might be a cost, it's a larger cost associated with security vulnerabilities than it is to upgrading to Windows 11. So when it's price and perspective, the best decision is always to be on the latest operating system. Even though it might be an additional expense, the bigger expense is not being secure and having an incident. That is a much 10, 20-fold higher expense than doing the migration. So it's always perspective, in my opinion. And sometimes companies don't see that perspective or don't understand, that it can happen to us, or there's a cost that's there that they don't want to put budget into, but they will have to put budget into it another way if they're not keeping that secure. But also the time management to making sure a legacy operating system is secure. And we're going to think about the time you spend for additional work to making sure that's secure instead of letting Windows making sure your operating system is secure. So that's something to keep in mind, but I would always recommend being on the latest version. It's the only way path forward, and what Windows would always recommend. Or at least have air-gapped environments for the time being as you're doing these transitions and set up the right protocols, policies in place. But it's going to be hard to be compliant while maintaining an old operating system. You're just naturally going to fall out of certain compliances realistically. So, but like I said, don't worry, there's still time, typically years after. The one thing I'd be worried if you're still in Windows XP, or those items that the software doesn't support even anymore to making sure they're secure. So at least for the time being, Windows 10 is supported by a lot of software, security software, including our stack of software. So
Excellent pointers, Edgar. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I think our listeners are walking away with a lot of information and solid game plan for managing this change. Thanks again for joining us. It was great to have you here.
no problem. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you for joining us for the Enterprise Thought Leadership Podcast. Please do follow us on social media and subscribe for more ideas and insights. Until next time.